And that's the thing about working distributedly, that your mindset transitions from that knowledge is power into knowledge shared is power. So the more that I share online, the more powerful I become, because the more visible, the more exposed, if I can use that word, I will become in terms of not only what I do, but also in terms of what I know. How is that going to help? Well, it's going to help. We want something very simple. Is the more people see you, what you're doing, the less they will be interrupting you. Why? Because they know that you're doing work. They know that you're having so many meetings, that you're having so much work to do, that you have got so many tasks. So they're going to say, yeah, I cannot, or I can, depending on obviously the workload, work with that particular colleague. Eventually, what you realize is that through digital, you can tame expectations of your colleagues, much more colleagues, customers, business partners, whatever, much more effectively than if you were doing at the office. And for that alone, boy, is all the benefit. Because if you can tame the expectations, you can basically tame the outputs and the results, and then you can produce them in the time frame that you find is necessary and correct for that to happen.
Yeah, that was a really nice summary. That knowledge it is not about knowledge is power, but sharing knowledge is power.
Yeah.
Is there some kind of I'm pretty sure that sort of getting to that mindset, or sort of realizing that sort of sharing mentality that must have taken a lot of work. Is there some kind of a skill that you are training right now related to distributed working that you're sort of focusing on, or you find sort of difficult to learn?
Well, it's definitely, when you're working distributedly, it's difficult to learn to share what you're working on. In my experience, through other years, a lot of people do not like sharing what they're working on, right? For multiple reasons. People don't like to show that they're not doing really a lot of work. People are not certain that what they're doing is helpful or valuable to other colleagues. People say that they don't have the time to decide what they're going to share, what they're not going to share. So they come up with all sorts of various different reasons as to why they don't share proactively what they're working on, right? The way I try to describe it is that opening up and sharing your knowledge is a muscle that you train. And like every muscle is the practice. So the more you practice a particular task, the more that you practice a particular new habit or new behavior, the more profound it becomes. So what I keep telling people is, sometimes people tell me, yeah, but how do I build that muscle? How do I train the muscle? I said, well, start with the item that gives you the less friction, as an example, right? So the one that forces you to learn the least. So no learning to be taking on, right? And what I keep telling people about, you have got the perfect tools for doing that. Number one, your agenda. Everyone has got an agenda. Everyone has got what they're planning to do for the day. The number of tasks, the number of meetings, the number of customers or colleagues they're going to talk to, the presentations that they may be working, the products, the processes, whatever it is that sits on your agenda. So I always tell people, I think it is going to be almost impossible for you to find nothing in your agenda you could share with other folks. There's always going to be something that you could share. And I'm not talking, confidential, keep it to yourself. I don't need to know. I don't need to have like a 4-page document of what you're doing. I just need one liner telling me, yeah, today I'm going to record a podcast with Lewis. That to me is opening up. That to me is sharing proactively online, like you were mentioning that you were going to do the, the LinkedIn story and everything else. That's exactly it. That's proactively sharing already something that happens in your work. And instead of thinking of ourselves that we're going to self-censor ourselves, let it down to others to decide for them if you don't provide value or if you do provide value, right? So what I keep telling people, the easiest way to get started with building this muscle is to start with your comfort area. Your comfort area right now is email and calendar, right? So email and meetings. Tasks probably will be another third coming up close, right? So start with those. So from those, pick up something that you want to tell the world about that you're working on, something that excites you, something that you want and you could talk for hours and hours, no end. Something that you think it is interesting for you, that triggers your mind, that's an interesting thought. I never thought about that. Oh, that's an interesting article. Or I'm going to meet up with this customer. Even just basically sharing something so simple internally, I'm going to meet up with this customer today and we're going to talk about this topic. That simple act of bravery, that silly, simple act of bravery, it's already telling someone else, oh, hang on, that's actually my customer. Maybe we need to exchange some notes before you talk to my customer so you get to know where they are, right? Is that radical exercise of transparency? Is that building that muscle, right? It's how you go from that information is power, knowledge is power, into that knowledge shared is power. Now, the thing is that once you start working that muscle and you become comfortable sharing stuff about your agenda, about your emails that you get and everything else, you realize that you will be able to start sharing anything that you will want to. And the sky is the limit on that one. Because right now, I have myself the opposite challenge, right? The opposite challenge is not that I don't have anything to share, is that I have got so many interesting things that I would want to share and talk about that I need to prioritize what I want to do and share, right? And that's a good problem to have because it helps you become very critical, I think, questioning what is it that you want to share that is worthwhile, right? And that's where it becomes really important because that's when you understand that your muscle is trained and that you're on to the next level already, right? Until you reach that level, you're training the muscle. I mean, they say that it takes about 21 iterations of one single act to become a habit. So 21 days of the agenda, 21 days of picking up one email that you want to share with everyone out there, or whatever the interaction is, and after that it becomes a new habit, and then you will be able to go back out of it. And because you will see that you actually enjoy doing those acts of sharing, you will want to continue doing more of them and then pick up different subjects and pick up different stuff and thinking, hey, today I'm thinking about this particular topic. Has anyone seen anything about it, right? An example is where you may be going to work and you may be telling everyone, hey, today I'm going to be working on this presentation that I need to finish off for this particular client. And then one of your colleagues from another team, completely different team, they come to you, we did this presentation 2 weeks ago. Check it out. Maybe you want to reuse some stuff there. Then avoiding reinventing the wheel is where the magic is. I mean, to me, the way I used to frame it all of these years is it's all about serendipity. So how do you, and actually facilitated serendipity, how do you provoke these random acts of knowledge that you share that maybe not benefiting for you that moment, but that X amount of time is spot on where you need it, right? That's where the magic is. That's the muscle that we need to train. And for that muscle to train and train it well, it's all practice, right? And start with what you feel comfortable with. And right now, we are very comfortable with email and the agenda. So start there, right? Then over time, you will start sharing stuff that you find on the internet, conversations that you have with people, files, documents that you're working on, tasks, whatever else. That comes later after you become comfortable with that act of sharing in a way, right? But that's typically how I would start developing the new behavior. And then obviously what happens is that when you start doing that, you will be amazed about how you think that what you share is not really relevant or helpful. And then you actually have got people coming back to you telling you, oh, this was super helpful. Thanks very much for sharing it. I'm going to reuse it for X, Y, Z. That's also addictive in a way, because that's when you start seeing the value add that you add to everyone's work. And you will always try to want to do more and more of that, right? One of the things that happens in our nature, human nature, which is actually a principle of who we are as humans, is that we cannot, it's impossible for us to deny not helping others in need when we know that we can help them, right? So if you would ask me for something, if I know how to do it, and if I know that you need it, it's going to be very difficult for me to say, no, I'm not going to help you. It's from a human point of view, we're not wired that way. So this is the kind of behavior that they want to instigate, that opportunity where we continue adding into each other's conversations, into each other's learning activities, and how we actually collaborate and how we co-create together, and eventually all become of this massive round or massive networks and communities. That's how we organize work, right? and how work happens, as opposed to small, private, semi-obscure teams that is what's been going on so far. Silos has been there for a while. No wonder why, right? It's how we work, how we shift from working in those silos where scarcity of knowledge is what is playing, versus how do we move into that abundance environment where knowledge is infinite. It's the conversations that we have about it that is what is critical from that point of view, right? So that's where I would start. I would start by training the muscle. Think of that activity as training your muscles. And like I said, like when you're trying to train your muscles, is the frequent exercise that matters the most. And frequent, I don't mean like every hour of the day. Once a day is enough frequency for that. So one post a day, 2 lines a day. So don't tell me that you don't have time. Don't tell me that you don't know what to share. Don't tell me whatever, because at the end of the day, you go through hundreds of different things. And I'm only asking you for 1 sentence, 2 sentences. That's all I'm asking you, right? So no one should be able to stop you from doing that, right?
Yeah, and you learn most of the stuff while you sleep anyway. So actually, once a day is a pretty nice rhythm.
Yeah, and actually doing that and I mean, the way I used to recommend it to people, and I still do, is when you train that muscle and you do it once a day, you have got 2 options. Rather, you do it at the very beginning of your day, so you tell people what you're going to go through, right? So everyone has got an expectation of what you're going to go through, or you do it at the very end of the day, where you can tell people what you did before, right? So it becomes like an after reflection exercise, or more of a, here are my intentions for the day versus here's what I did at the end of the day, right? In both cases, it becomes a reflection exercise. So you're reflecting on what you want to do or what you find interesting to do on that day. And that's when it becomes a learning exercise as well, because things that you thought that were probably important, you realize that at the end of the day, they weren't really that important. And things that you didn't even have in your radar ended up being the stuff that you did right there throughout for the whole day. That's that reflection point, right? Where you basically share those items and then you decide where you're going to be on that spectrum, right? So like I said, I don't need to know every hour, but once a day works with me. Then obviously my experience, one of the things that happens is that once you do it, once you build the muscle, once you become comfortable, you will want to do more than once a day. And that's perfectly right. That's how your networks will digest your content and work with your content. There's no problem whatsoever. That's actually an encouraged behavior.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely sounds like you've been thinking about these things for a while.
It does, but again, it's if you look into running a marathon or like thinking in the long term, you realize that it's not the important thing is not really when you reach the end destination. It's actually when you start and you continue the journey. But what matters is actually the journey, right? It's how you learn along the way in acquiring these new behaviors, these new habits, and this new mindset shift that happens and everything else. That's where the magic is at this point. Right?
Yeah,